Welcome back into another episode of the Bleav in Georgia Tech podcast. We are your co-hosts. That is RJ Schafer. I'm Jackson Caudell coming to you Thursday, almost afternoon now, July 10th. Going to be talking about some of the latest developments with Georgia Tech. Just kind of just a broad overlook. But RJ, how you doing, man? How's your summer?
I'm feeling great. We're getting closer and closer to football season. Now we get to talk about fall camp. Pretty soon we'll be talking about opening day. So with every podcast, we're just getting a little bit closer to the season. Excitement's starting to build. So feeling a lot better than I did last podcast.
Absolutely, and we are going to get a little football talk today. Media days are coming up in Charlotte in a couple weeks. I, of course, will be there. We're gonna, we'll be able to podcast from there, kind of talk about all that's happening in a couple weeks. But before we get started, just the regular, we're near 800 subscribers now. I know each and every one of you that hasn't subscribed yet wants to be that 800th subscriber. So we would love it if you guys would subscribe to the channel, like the video, follow us wherever you get your podcasts. That would help us out a ton. Appreciate all the love and support you guys give us as we continue to do this show. Getting towards an exciting football season, then before you know it, it'll be basketball, baseball. It's just an endless cycle, and we love covering it all. So we appreciate all the support. Our main topic, as everybody probably guessed, um, is going to be Georgia Tech hiring Ryan Alpert as the new athletic director. We're going to get into that in a little bit. We were going to do an emergency pod, but they announced it at like the absolute worst time for me the other day. The Atlanta, as most I cover the Atlanta Hawks as well, and they were having media availability that day. So I was like, oh, crap, we couldn't do anything. So we're like, I will do it Thursday. But before we get into that, just a couple of, things that have been happening over the weekend. We did a recruiting episode with Najee a couple weeks ago, and we talked about some of the positions they were looking to fill. And defensive line was like one of the top ones, and they got two of their top targets over the weekend. So on the 4th of July, defensive end Chris Carbon committed to Georgia Tech over Mississippi State. That had kind of been rumored for a little bit. Like Tech was kind of the favorite going into that commitment. They landed him, got him. Like that was a position of need. Like we talk all the time about Georgia Tech just needing to get better on the defensive line. And we like what they've done in the past couple of recruiting classes, but you got to keep stacking those guys. And that was a player that they really wanted. The biggest one, happened on Sunday evening, though. Defensive tackle Freddie Wilson, Georgia Tech was able to beat out Miami and Minnesota, which is no small thing. Going down. He's obviously a former high school teammate of Derry Norris, who obviously plays at Georgia Tech right now. So really big commitments on the defensive line. There have been some misses, especially Dorian Barney committed to Michigan. A couple of other misses and whatnot. But getting those two guys over the weekend was really big. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, just getting two guys that are physical beasts, both guys in the defensive line. Obviously a need right now and a position that, we've talked about for a couple of podcasts, just needs to be recruited. You need to get a lot of depth at that position. I would say, you probably have the least amount of players on the defensive line out of all of those. Uh, Chris Carbon being 6'4", plays the edge. And then beating out some really good teams to get Wilson, another defensive tackle. I think there were two great additions, and just another, showing of how Georgia Tech really can out recruit some of these bigger programs, and I think that's tribute to Brent Key.
Yeah, no doubt, and we'll kind of see how the rest of the class plays out. Like there's still work to be done there, but I'd say it's a pretty successful summer
Yeah,
overall. And getting those two guys in a position of need was really good. And we'll cover more recruiting as more recruiting happens. Obviously, like kind of official visits, or it's a dead period right now. So June is obviously the big official visit period, and then you go into the dead period, and there's no visits going on. So it may be a little bit before we get some more recruiting news. So ACC Media Day attendees, we were just talking about that. So that was announced just this morning that alongside Brent Key, you'll have Haynes King, Malik Rutherford, Keelan Rutledge, and Kyle Eford will be in Charlotte. I like we're not going to talk about this long, but none of those guys being there doesn't surprise me at all. Like those are four of the leaders of the team, four seniors, four veterans, I guess I should say, of the program. Like, but this is not Haynes King. This is not his first time being there at all. Like he
yeah.
was there last year. Any thoughts on that?
Not really. Media days, you either love it or you hate it. I'm kind of in the middle. But I mean, I think it is kind of funny you get to see a guy like Malik Rutherford who, had thoughts about leaving Georgia Tech and then came back and now he's at media days, one of the leaders for the team. So I think that's cool to see. But for the best players at Tech, it's no shocker that, they were chosen for media days. Um, that's about all.
Yeah, that's like people ask me all the time, like, how fun is media day? Like, it's kind of cool the first time you go, and like, it's a privilege to go. Like, I recognize that, and I do enjoy that aspect. It's like, I don't know, just the whole event is not my cup of tea generally, and like some people like surprised when I tell them that, but it's just kind of, this is my fourth media day, or my third media day actually, and it's just, once you've been to one ACC media days, you've kind of been to them all.
Yeah.
But I guess let's get into the main topic. We covered, when J Bat left for Michigan State a little, it was right at the start of June. John Palumbo was named the interim athletic director. A couple days ago, it was announced from Pete Thamel at ESPN that Palumbo was going to be leaving to go with Bat, which is not really a surprise. Like, and that also kind of signaled that, hey, like this, they're probably close to hiring somebody. Like if the interim's leaving for another job, and also that was a pretty clear indicator that he was not getting the job. But news broke from both Pete Thamel at ESPN and then Ross Dellinger at Yahoo Sports both reported pretty close together that Georgia Tech was going to hire Tennessee Deputy Athletic Director Ryan Alpert as the new AD. It was announced, like, sometimes when you get like the reports from people that either cover the team or from like national college football insiders, sometimes like there's like a couple of days or maybe even a week or so before like you get an official announcement from the school. I want to say it was like maybe 45 minutes that Tech like announced, like they were out front and announced the hire. Like they kind of kept everything under wraps. But um look, I say this about a lot of coaching hires and athletic director hires. Like, I like it. I have no idea how it's going to turn out. Like, there's just so many factors that'll go into it. My first reaction from, I know that his name had been rumored for a little bit now, and doing research and everything. It's a very Jay Baddish hire. Like, I think they were looking for somebody of the same ilk. Like, obviously, Bat's main thing was fundraising. Like, that is what he did. I would put him up there with as good as anybody in the country at raising funds. Like that was something that Georgia Tech sorely needed when he took over, and he put them in a fantastic position. And I think we mentioned this when Bat left, is like, hey, this job's a whole lot more attractive than when it was when before Bat took over. Like after Todd Stansbury was fired, like there was a lot of like how attractive is this job. And now when Bat came in and did the job he did, we discussed that at length in previous pods. Like, yeah, I thought this was a pretty attractive job. It still needs some work. Like there's still work to be done, but I think it's a very very good job, and I think this is a very good hire.
Yeah, and I'm gonna touch on the same note that you did. This is a very, a mirror of the J Bat hire. Obviously, he wasn't an AD at Tennessee, but he's coming from a program that has a lot of experience in one of, if not the best conference in the country. He worked primarily with finance. He worked, in Tennessee's deals with Nike. He worked in with bringing money to the university. He worked a lot with analytics. I just think he is kind of what J Bat was, and you're giving, this job to a guy who has a lot of experience, doesn't necessarily have the athletic director title at the level um, of Georgia Tech, but to see somebody like this, wanting the Georgia Tech job, that makes me think this job is very attractive. That makes me think there was a lot of very worthy candidates who wanted this job. And I think Albert's fundraising ability you will see very well. I think his ability to deal with some of these big companies, as college football is starting to move fully into the NIL era, he's been a player first guy. Obviously Tennessee started charging a talent fee with that money being raised going straight to the players. And I think he's going to do the same thing. He's going to prioritize the department in general, but he's also going to make sure the players have a good experience as well. And I think, that's what you want in an AD hire.
Yeah, and like one of the first thoughts I had when I heard this is, regardless, like of your thoughts about Tennessee, like whether you like them or not. I think Tennessee has been one of the best run. They've been very up out in front with the NIL thing. Like I think they have one of the best NIL collectives in the country, and I know like sometimes that's not going to translate over to Georgia Tech. Like you're going to have to work a little bit differently there, but I think he was obviously a big part of that, and I think getting somebody that has seen how that works and just look with the rev share and all this kind of stuff that's happening like right now as we speak, and just having somebody that's been dealing with that at a major program is just a huge plus. I mean, some things like you can see in like the press release. When he was a senior executive, he oversaw business and finance, development, marketing, ticketing, capital projects, sponsorships, and more, collectively helping Tennessee increase its annual revenue by over $100 million since 2022. In fiscal year 2024 alone, the department record $228 million in operating revenue and raised nearly $140 million through the Tennessee Fund. Like, I, that's probably as good as it gets as far as money figures and whatnot. And again, it just goes to the point. I think this was a very in the mold of Jay Back. Can you come in here and continue what he's doing? Obviously, he's going to have to build out his stuff. Like John Palumbo played a really big part in what Bat did, and we'll see kind of who he brings in and who sticks around. Like that's I think having a good staff around you is obviously very important. Very important, especially when it comes to taking over a new program. So look, it's hard to grade some of these hires. Like, there's just so many different challenges with athletic directors and what they're going to face. Obviously, it's going to be rev share, NIL, that kind of thing. And then also the future of the ACC is obviously very pertinent. Like, it's not nothing in the immediate, but, as we know, the buyouts for the ACC is going to go down and down and down. And then, I think around 2030, it's going to be around $75 million to lead the conference. And we'll see what some of the Florida States or the Clemsons or the Miamis do when it gets to that point. But that's just something on the horizon that, he's got to be prepared to deal with and making sure that Georgia Tech's in the best position possible. But just to kind of sum it all up and put a bow on it, look, I think it was a very wise hire. It was a smart hire. We'll see if it works out. Like I think it's good, but we'll just have to wait and see. Like some things look good on paper, don't necessarily turn out that way. Maybe it's even better than we expect. But any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with just on paper what I see. In his time at Tennessee, they made a college football playoff, appearance. They made an appearance in the College World Series. They were in the Elite Eight twice. Like this is one of, and I don't want to say Tennessee is a very easy job. The SEC is a very hard conference to be in, and it could very easily not have been that way for Tennessee. They could have not made a College World Series appearance. They could have not been in the college football playoff. And again, he wasn't fully responsible for all of that, but he was, again, at the top of that athletic department. And on paper, what I see, the ability to raise money, the ability to help oversee a very successful athletic department in one of the hardest places to win in the country. I think this is, one of the best hires Tech could have made.
Yep, and like to your point, like all of Tennessee's athletic programs are pretty good. Like they haven't won, a national title, but like their baseball program is top notch. Like it's arguably one of the best jobs in the country, I think, without a doubt. The football program, like for a large part, I'm aging myself a little bit, but like I'm nearly 30 years old, and like for a large part of my adult life, like from like middle school, high school, and through college. Like Tennessee has not been the best football program, but ever since they got Josh Heupel and this whole new regime in there, it's been a whole lot better. They run really smoothly. It's better than the Jeremy Pruitt, the Derek Dooley. I'm old enough to remember the one Lane Kiffin year back in like 2009 or something, and like that football program's really trended in the right direction, back to where those fans expect it to be. The women's basketball is one of the historic programs, and men's basketball is really good. A little underachieving, I would probably say, but they're really good year in and year out. You can expect tournament appearances. And look, I know like Ryan Alpert himself is not solely responsible for that. I know that, but it's just seeing that success, seeing what leads to that success, and seeing what top-notch college athletic programs do and how they're run, like being a part of that is just crucial. And it's, look, Jay Back coming from Alabama, like the premier program pretty much in college athletics for most of my lifetime. Like that was, I think, a huge hand in his success. And, I think, Ryan Alpert's really good in that regard. So any final thoughts on this?
Not really, other than the fact that I like that Georgia Tech made a similar hire to Jay, got a younger guy for the job, a guy that is very good with money. I think all of the boxes that you could have checked for your new athletic director, Georgia Tech, I think you checked all of them. Previous success, conference prestige. I think you did everything that you could and more. I mean, I really love this hire.
Yep. Let's see if it works out. But I know this was a short episode, but appreciate everybody tuning in each and every time. Again, we're near 800 subscribers. Would love it if y'all could propel us past that point, and then let's just keep marching onward. Appreciate all the love and support you guys give us. Just subscribe to the channel, like the video, helps us out a ton. Follow us wherever you get your podcast. We would love it if you would. Leave us a review. We will be back next week. We'll have a little bit of a media day, more in-depth media day preview, and also fall camp is coming up, and we're going to kind of be previewing both the offensive and defensive sides. I know we've talked a lot about the roster stuff, but just kind of giving our overall thoughts before we head into fall camp. And then, it's I think we're about 7 weeks out from when they face Colorado on Friday night. So it's getting closer and closer and closer. I know summer's starting to go by a little bit slower now, but again, appreciate everybody, and we will see you next time.